Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this past year, just like every year, Apple released a new set of iPhones, such as this iPhone 13 Pro Max, and in turn released along with it a new version of iOS. And every year they release a new version of iOS with the new iPhones. And there's increasing concern that iOS 15 and future versions of iOS, based off the iOS 15 updates, 15.1, 15.2, and even the betas, that it's becoming increasingly less reliable. And so there's quite a bit of concern, but I wanted to talk about how iOS 15 and 16 will get better and maybe what we can expect in the future. So I thought we'd first start off by talking about what it was like in the past. I've used every version of iOS and every beta version of iOS since the original. So here I have a first generation iPhone, or what many people call iPhone 2G. It was before we had 3G connectivity, and it was very simple. In fact, it was less complex by a long way compared to what we have today. And so as you can see, we don't even have a wallpaper. If I lock the phone, we have a wallpaper, but we don't have a wallpaper on the home screen. So when it unlocks, we've just got a simple black background, and we have things like music with cover flow. So if we rotate it here, we have cover flow, we have a simple way to access our music, our web browser, maybe weather, and things looked a little different. As we were in the digital age, things looked skeuomorphic, as many people refer to it as, where they represent things in the real world to give us a way to move easily into the digital world. So again, things like the iPod, we were familiar with that, so Apple made the music symbol an iPod. The same is true with weather. We have a little sun or camera, and that looks familiar today as well. But everything from notes to YouTube, you can see the original YouTube app and more. Things were reliable, they were dependable, and very simple. As we moved on to an iPhone 4 and 4S, we had a little bit different complexity. While not much changed as far as the overall software, the hardware was becoming better and better. And with the software, again, we still have things like Newsstand, but it's a shelf, so you would expect something like that, and again with that skeuomorphic design. If we go into maybe settings here, you can see this is the last version of iOS that we can use, 6.1.3 on this particular version. And so this is basically the last version that was available to the public until we had a huge change with iOS 7. And so we still have the skeuomorphic design. We had apps like Minecraft, updated YouTube apps, Google Maps, but still no navigation too much unless Google Maps offered that later on. But the music app had changed, and it had become increasingly feature-packed, but no less reliable. In fact, using this phone, I don't once remember when there were new updates thinking that it was a problem, and are we going to have less reliability? Will apps crash? Will things be less stable? Will I not be able to make a phone call? Things like that were just not even in the thoughts of iPhone users. They were known to be steady, reliable, get you through most of the day with your battery, and just work. And they continued like that for quite some time. But then we got iOS 7. And iOS 7, and while this is not iOS 7, iOS 7 brought flat design, as you can see here, and it brought complexity to the overall OS. It brought great things such as the control center, where we could turn off Bluetooth, turn it back on, turn on Wi-Fi, turn it off, and quickly access settings. So it brought new ideas to the OS and quicker ways to access different things. As far as multitasking, it brought the new card style to it. And with the older version, multitasking was a bit different. We didn't have true multitasking, and if you wanted to close an app, you had to press and hold and then tap on that app to close it. So it was very different from what we had in the past, but it was very unstable. The early versions of iOS 7 were really nice to use, but definitely a different change as far as reliability. And this particular version, if we go into settings here, you'll see it's nice and fast, is on iOS 9.3.2. And so this version I've kept around just to sort of keep things around to see what it was like, but everything from the iTunes Store to the App Store had a different design. Very flat, and over the years, Apple moved that slowly back into a little bit more depth with the most recent version of iOS, with iOS 15. Now, iOS 15 is okay for some people. I'm currently running the major stable version on my iPhone 13 Pro of iOS 15.1.1 at the time of this video, and I recently changed to it because iOS 15.2 betas were very unstable. There were apps that weren't working, things were crashing, and it was something that being a beta, you sort of expect, or it was worse than what I'd had in the past. So I moved over to the stable version until the next beta comes out so I can test that. It was something I found to be very unstable. And so with the increase in complexity comes difficulty in fixing issues. Now, with the latest version of iOS 15.1.1, Apple specifically addressed issues that were causing issues with dropping calls. And this is something that you depend on your phone for, obviously. But on iPhone 12 and 13 series with the Qualcomm modems, they were dropping calls and they patched that individually. Now, iOS 15 has been more buggy than many recent versions, and this is the first year that both my daughter and my wife have said there's problems with it, that it has poor battery life. They're getting to the end of the day with either no battery life or just 30 or 20%. And this is unusual for them using iPhone 12 Pro and iPhone 12. And so with that, typically I don't hear anything from either of them, and they're very stable and they just seem to work for them. But lately things have been getting worse. But I think we're going to have a much better future. However, with iOS 14, iOS 15, Apple introduced features at WWDC, and then at the launch of iOS, decided not to include them, such as SharePlay or screen sharing, and just different features that we expected, digital ID, that we still don't have, that's delayed into January or maybe beyond that. So there's features that Apple has been working on, and maybe it's been the difficulty of working from home, with collaborating being a little bit more difficult, and not being able to solve those issues together in the same room may make for extra difficulty. I'm not sure, I'm not a programmer, but those complexities with all of the new features added on top of what they already have just makes things more and more difficult to make stable over time. If you change one thing in the control center, maybe add a feature, it can affect something that you didn't expect altogether. And so solving the complexity of iOS updates and more needs to be something Apple gets back to. Apple has always been known for great software, and their software was always accompanied with great designed hardware or really well-designed hardware, such as the Apple Watch or the iPhone or other products in the past. They have a few things that are a little bit goofy, such as charging the Magic Mouse, but most of their designs are pretty solid and are something that most people aspire to be able to either work on or create themselves. But now their software is falling behind. And I think this means we're going to get better and better. The reason I say this is with betas, we have a feedback app. This means that every time someone submits feedback, submits a crash report, there's a problem with iOS or macOS, Apple is aware of this. Apple is aware of these problems on their iPhone. They use their phones themselves, they know what's going on with them, and there's a point where they know they need to fix it. That does take time to do, of course, but I think with iOS 15, I think we'll see it gain stability. We've seen stability in the past come and go, with iOS 11 being something that was less stable. iOS 12 seemed to be very solid. 13 was hit or miss. At the end, it was great. 14, again, wasn't great until the end. So this is something we've been seeing more and more that I think Apple will address with iOS 15 and into iOS 16. Now with iOS 16, I would hope that while I would really like a redesign, I think it's going to be a stability update, where maybe we'll get a different control center, or maybe a refined control center that's been rumored for some time. Maybe we'll get some icon changes, but I would love to see them focus on stability this year, not just with iOS, but iPadOS and macOS. watchOS seems to be the only one that seems to be more and more solid over time, but maybe that's because it's not as complex, or it just could be a different team in general. But I really love iOS, and I've been using it since the beginning, but I think Apple could really refine this. It needs to be super reliable. People on the Android side that use that regularly no longer have to think, is iOS more stable or is Android more stable? iPhone is all about security and reliability, but with Android, it doesn't seem to be less stable in my use. Using a Pixel or a Pixel 6 Pro or any of the other recent iPhone competitors, basically the Fold or the Note, they seem to be fairly stable over time. That's not the case for all manufacturers and all versions, but the most recent version of Android 11, and then after the Android 12 updates, it seems to be as stable as iOS in my usage. And I'm seeing different things online of people saying the same thing. So future versions of iOS need to be more stable, and I think this is what Apple's going to do. I think it's going to be more reliable with minor refinements, and once everything hopefully gets back to normal, I think we'll see great improvements with iOS. Apple has really nailed the hardware lately. It's top-notch. The latest hardware is great, and it's hard to get much better until they can maybe eliminate the notch or maybe the camera bump, or just do something different in general. But the quality is there. Now we're just waiting for the software to catch up, and I think Apple realizes this and will be moving on that soon. But I would love to hear from you what you think about this. Do you think Apple's going to get better? Do you think it's going to get worse? Or do you think Apple should just redesign the whole thing overall? That's a very complex task. I doubt we'll see that. But with macOS, it's been more and more refined over time. Now it just needs that stability. So we need that off year for stability. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Of course, if you'd like to get your hands on the wallpaper I have in this video that I have on the 13 Pro Max, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. All of the other wallpapers are actually from previous versions of iOS, so they're there on different devices, so you should have those if you want them. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.